Hi guys, this evening with End Direct Provision Action Group. My name is Mead Ivrian and we are joined this evening by Donnah Vuma, who is a wonderful advocate for direct provision and ending direct provision. She herself was a resident in direct provision. She is a lady with many strings in her bow, who currently is studying in the University of Limerick, doing humanities in her final year. Well done, you. I wish you the best of luck with exams and everything coming up. Donnah is also the founder of Every Child is Your Child, has worked as a policy officer with Thurles, does amazing stuff with Massey, and of course is a mum of four. This month, because in our newsletter, we've decided that we would do an issue around women. And celebrating women and looking at women in DP with International Women's Day and with Mother's Day happening in March. We thought it would be really important. And who better than to the lovely Donnah Vuma to have with us, and she very gracefully accepted. So welcome, Donnah, and thank you so much for being with us this evening. It's great that we could chat with you.
Thank you so much, Mead, and thank you for inviting me. It's such a pleasure to be able to talk to you. Thank you so much.
So just to start things off, just to have a quick chat, I suppose really without kind of turning it totally personal about your personal experience, but of course your experience is extremely important, but the general struggles, I suppose, of women in direct provision especially, I mean, what are those day-to-day struggles that women face in direct provision that, we just don't think about? Us, the rest of us women and mothers in Ireland, that maybe we're not aware of, or that we don't realise that these women that we see maybe coming in and out of centres, that they are actually facing some serious struggles in these centres and going through direct provision.
Yeah, there's so many challenges, Mead, and I will relate a lot to my experience because I lived it for 7 years, with my 3 children. Obviously, Frederick is only 9 months old, so he's fortunate enough not to have had to experience direct provision. But obviously, I will tell you a bit as well from what I've seen, from friends and other, people that we interact with that live in direct provision and have babies as young as, as that or are newly born. But yeah, it's a challenge from the very first day, you get into that setting of direct provision, from the time that you arrive, because from that time, you now have to explain to your children why you have to live in that place and what that place is. It's a totally bizarre setup. Like, it's nothing compared to what you would call a home. So it's very different from something that you would have come from originally. Like, I would have come from a house, where I lived with my children and my family. And now you're coming into a space where you are forced to share oftentimes a single room with your 3-4 children. And in some cases, someone will have a partner with them. So the whole family is often confined to a single room or 2 rooms. Now, obviously, that comes with challenges like, privacy. First of all, if you know yourself as a woman, there's things that you cannot do in front of your children, especially if you have male children. There's specific times of the month. We know how the menstrual cycle varies. There's times when you really just don't want to be exposing them to that, even not just with the boys, but even with your younger girl children. I found that with myself, because when we came in, they hadn't reached that stage yet, but I was finding that, I was trying to navigate that space, trying to protect them from that, seeing all of that, but as well with myself trying to have my privacy. But there's other things as well, like not being able to cook for them, for example. So if you're put in a center that has no self-catering facilities, then it means that your meals will be served in a canteen. Mm-hmm. So that's definitely, out of the ordinary. It means that whenever your child is hungry, you are not able to quickly go to the kitchen, maybe whip up a sandwich, or, make something for them quickly, scramble some eggs or something like that. No, you have to confine to the meal times that are set by the center. The only thing really that you can serve a child in the room is maybe some milk, some bread with some spread, you know, things like that.
Yeah. I think it's very important that people realize, because I think a lot of people don't realize that it's that kind of confinement of not being able to just go and make yourself a cup of tea, or if
Yeah,
you have a sick child or a teething child, that you can't just go to the freezer and get some cold fruit, or to get an ice pop, or to get a cold drink, or to get something for that
yeah,
child. If you have a child, kids go through different phases. And we all know kids, even though you might give them a wonderful dinner, they might decide an hour later they want a snack. And that
exactly.
necessarily doesn't necessarily have to be some kind of processed snack. I mean, as you just mentioned, you know, whipping up some scrambled eggs, what becomes, what is, I should say, very normal to the rest of us. And
Yeah,
we just take it so much for granted. I think it's really important to stress to people to try and picture what it must be like, that
yeah,
you have set times that you can feed your children. So even if your child is hungry between those times,
yeah,
and if you don't have anything, even, you know, I mean, we all know that people in direct provision are only on a certain allowance every week. If you don't have anything at that time, because let's say you've had your period, you've had to
yeah,
bypass, you know, you've had to buy some certain bits and pieces maybe for the children, and you don't have the money to buy all these snacks, what do? You have a child sitting there saying, "Mommy, I'm really hungry,"
yeah.
and you can't do anything about it. It's a very, you know, kind of desperate and pathetic situation to be putting women in as mothers, that you can't provide food for that child. And I think a lot of people don't really realize that. They think, oh, you
Yeah.
know, they're 3 meals a day, they're being fed and watered.
Exactly, and that's very often the case. You know, where you can't do some, like you mentioned, there, a simple cup of coffee. You're not allowed to have something as simple as a kettle in your room
Mm.
because apparently it's a hazard. You know, yeah,
Yeah,
it's a health and safety issue.
yeah,
So you can imagine yourself. I mean, we know how much the country loves tea and coffee. Like, you know, if it's cold outside, you want to make that cup of coffee. You're not able to do that, but simple things like you say, there's a snack for a child. If you know, with this with the growing kids, this, they constantly want to snack.
mm,
That's what they do generally, and you want to try as much as possible to provide a healthy snack. But if we look at toddlers, for example, when you start weaning the child, there is no food that's provided in those canteens for
yeah,
a parent that is trying to wean a child. You have to find a way to, you know, to provide that for yourself. So it's oftentimes in the form of you know, the processed foods that you would buy at the supermarket, you know. And we know, you know yourself, that is very discouraged anyways. You're not supposed to be giving your baby that.
yeah, the
But
high
as
salt, high
well,
sugar.
you want to try and give your child the healthiest option as possible.
Yeah.
So it becomes a huge challenge, you know, when parents are faced with that kind of situation.
I mean, I'm talking about kids. I mean, if you kind of go back kind of further again to the maternity side of women in direct provision who are pregnant or who have very newborn babies or small children, the struggles that are faced with even going for you know, a prenatal exam, or if you are having diabetes while pregnant, or, you know, because I know a lot of the reports we see, like, I mean, if they have a set meal that they're giving you 3 times a day, if you now have additional needs due to pregnancy, which you can't help, you have no
Yeah,
control over that. And obviously we all know pregnant women, I've been there myself, or, you know, 3 a.m. I want some chicken, or I want something, and you can't do that. You know what I mean? You just don't have the capacity to be able to do what nearly every other pregnant woman in the country is probably
yeah.
doing.
It's extremely difficult, you know. You know, like you find this is very common in pregnant women, where you become anemic, you know, where you have to supplement your iron, you have to supplement your folic. And so many women in direct provision become deficient of certain nutrients and vitamins during their pregnancy, because they are not able to meet the dietary requirements that are needed. Another thing that we have to remember is that oftentimes in the canteen, the food is it's, what's the word I'm looking for, like they limit the amount that they give you, right?
Portion.
So yeah, so yeah, so if you go in on that day and you feel like, okay, I want to have 3 pies, for example, because I am eating for two, or I want to keep one as a snack for later. They ration food. So
Wow.
they can easily tell you that it's only two eggs per person. It's only one banana per person. It's only one orange per person. So, you know, it's very difficult for you to even meet the needs, let alone to try and take something to keep as a snack for later on. But like you say, they're being able just to even prepare that, to have a fridge in your room with the freezer where you can say, oh, I feel like a popsicle later on, and you know, you can have something like that. It's absolutely impossible. But then we also look at the way that the centers are set up. I remember this one particular time, my neighbor, the time I was pregnant, she was pregnant with twins. Well, she wasn't my neighbor as in downstairs, but she was upstairs, right? So when the further she got into her pregnancy, the more difficult it got for her to be able to, you know, to come and go up and down the stairs. And her constant worry was that what's going to happen now when I have these twins, and then I constantly have to find a way. She had a toddler as well. She was thinking, I now have to constantly find a way to go up and, you know, down the stairs. I was talking to her recently, and her biggest stress was that she feels like she's so confined. She feels like she's in prison, because every time she thinks of going out to take a walk, she has to think of, how am I going to get that buggy down? How am I going to get it back up again? How am I going to make sure all the kids are down at the same time with me? You know, simple logistical things like that are not taken into consideration for mothers and
I
parents.
think as well, I mean, on top of that, you know, even maternity care, you know, I mean, we all know when we're pregnant, we have to go for scans, we have to go for checkups. And then if you have additional needs, which, you know, statistically, it's been proven that a lot of women who are pregnant in direct provision have, as you said, they have anemia, they have diabetes, there just seems to be a very high rate of these issues that can happen in pregnancy. And when you have those problems, you have to go to more appointments. And, you know, I mean, the fact that what supports are in place? Are there any supports in place to facilitate for the likes of, let's say, Mosney, where we know there's a massive, huge walk that you have to do to get out of Mosney, even to get to the main road, to get a bus, to get to the hospital?
Yeah.
I mean, the fact that there's no facilitation there for someone who is pregnant, who maybe has a 3-year-old, and they now have anemia and diabetes, they're 8 months pregnant. Any woman who has ever been pregnant will know it's tough the last couple of weeks. I mean, you're carrying a heavy load. And then on top of that, if you're not well, and plus you're carrying the stress of you're going through this status and you're fighting to stay somewhere and be safe and with your children, whatever you have even been through to even get here in the first place, you have all these added layers of trauma on you. And then you're expected to just somehow manage